This is an ad by BetterHelp. BetterHelp recently surveyed over 16,000 people and found that while 75% of people believe it's wise to seek support, only 27% of Americans are in therapy, and people stay silent to avoid being judged. BetterHelp has over 10 years of experience matching you with the right therapist, because we're all better with help. Visit BetterHelp.com/stopthestigma for their first ever State of Stigma report, the latest in mental health research.
Oh, Mrs. Garcia, you're a school counselor and new homeowner and grad student. You're an ANDer. National University supports the whole you, so you can focus on what matters most. Learn more at nu.edu.
This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from, so whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be talking with Tristan Freeman. Does absolutely amazing work over at Bustin' Brackets. Just going to be doing a nice little check-in as to what we're seeing nationally, what has led to so many upsets over the last week or so. We're going to be talking about the tenor of just these teams going on the road, them coming up a little bit short, what we're all seeing in terms of these conferences as well, as many of them are very much nip and tuck. It feels like every power conference is sort of now what the Big Ten has been in the last few seasons, where you've got maybe 1 or 2 top teams, and then past that, you've got just a big, giant middle. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to bring up a few teams that are going to be playing on Monday as well, including that Michigan versus Ohio State game, and just the disappointment that we've seen with Michigan, and so much more. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday, as we hit some big shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways via further those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and from there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
We will start with the late game first, because for UCLA, things have been all sorts of awful for them. Unless if you've been betting unders with UCLA, 13 unders of 4 overs with them as they played a low-scoring slog against Washington, and they improved to 6-10-1 against the spread. UCLA gets it done by kind of 73-61 for Washington. They go 6-25 from three-point range, and they had 19 turnovers in this game. Not like UCLA was much better with 15 turnovers, but Adam Bona, he had just 1 rebound, but was able to contribute 22 points for Washington. Xavier Wheeler had to try to do it all, 27 points, 6 turnovers, and nobody around him was able to make a 3. So that was a rather ugly game, and it has been very ugly out there in the Pac-12 in general, as right now you've got a Stanford team that's been all over the place, but now they're starting to rack up a few wins. They take down Utah by kind of 79-73, and this guy in Cannon Carlisle has been very solid for Stanford recently, just went 3 of 12 from the floor, but even without him being able to give you a big game, even with having the full Jared Bynum, you were able to have the Stanford team be very efficient with just 5 turnovers. For Utah, they do go 13 of 32 from three-point range. You were able to get a massive performance, 16 points, 11 rebounds out of Davion Smith, and then Brandon Carlson was able to chip in there 16 points. It was a little bit of a different looking lineup for this team, as they were without Raleigh Worcester in this game, and for Utah, it certainly did show up, as they did not do a very good job of being able to force a lot of ball pressure, so that was a little bit of an issue. Valparaiso has been a less than stellar team thus far this season, but they got the job done against Illinois State. This by kind of 59-50. Valparaiso actually now 10-6 against the spread. So, well, the straight up results have been horrible. Against the spread, this team has actually not been too bad. Cooper Schweiger was able to give you 16 points, and for this Valparaiso team, they have been quite a under team thus far this season as well. As for Illinois State, they're now 6-10 against the spread, so that's a little bit of an issue. Our DK network right up, by the way, we are now up to 13 games above 500. It took a very late 3 by one of our good friends, but we were able to get this one in with UAB catching 16 on the close, more like 15 to 15.5 points. The UAB Blazers fall 86-73 for UAB. Late in this game, they were able to catch a 3 from Daniel Ortiz to be able to get it in, and it was for a UAB team that they probably should have covered this game in a even below average shooting day. They went just 5 of 26 from 3-point range. Meanwhile, for Florida Atlantic, they were just 8 of 27 for themselves, but another over for Florida Atlantic as John L. Davis was able to go off for 30 points, and for UAB, no real demonstrative scores, but they did a solid job winning the turnover battle by a count of 11-8. It has been a UAB team that's been a little bit rough against the spread thus far this season, but Florida Atlantic has yet to cover a conference game thus far. Meanwhile, UAB, they're now just 6-8-1 against the spread, but from a UAB perspective, quite a over team thus far this season. 10 overs, 5 unders, and we've seen that a lot in the American as Memphis now 11 overs, 5 unders, and a push. They had probably the performance of the day. 112 points is what they put up on Wichita State, winning 112-86. Now, it's fair to say that this was an outlier. Memphis went 19 of 30 from 3-point range. Jaquan Walton, Javon Quinterly both had 23 points apiece. They combined to go 11 of 14 from 3-point range. For Wichita State, they lose this game going 13 of 25 from 3-point range. Kobe Rogers was able to supply 20 points, but for Wichita State, they also lost the rebound battle 29-24, the turnover battle 18-10. Memphis now 15-2. It's been a little bit wobbly with them in some of their results, going to overtime against UTSA. As a matter of fact, prior to this game, Memphis had won each of their previous 3 games by 3 points or fewer, but this team, they have been able to persevere recently, so they were able to get the job done once again. And Tulane has been quite the over team as well. They went to overtime to be able to cash in over against Tulsa, and they were able to get the win outright. 94-87. Tulane was laying about 2.5 on the road, and for Tulane, they were able to have Kevin Cross go off for a big game. In this one, he was able to have 28 points, and for Tulane, they go 8 of 22 from 3, but they really made their hay at the free throw line. 24 of 29 at the charity stripe. For Tulsa, this was a team that was actually a really good defensive team towards the early part of the season. Feels like that's starting to fall off just a little bit for the squad, so certainly something worth keeping in mind. For UW Green Bay, all of a sudden, they have been playing quite a few overs, and UW Green Bay has been able to catch quite a bit of fire. 79-71. They're able to get the job done against Cleveland State, and for this UW Green Bay team, after a 4-6 start to the season, they've now went 7-2 in their last 9 games. Cleveland State goes just 4 of 20 from 3-point range, while Green Bay 12 of 34 from distance. Foster Wonder, he has been a wonder for this team. He was able to supply 15 points off the bench. Noah Reynolds was able to come up big with his 32 points. And UW Green Bay, all of a sudden, 12-5 against the spread. They have really been making you some money, and all of a sudden, offense has been able to produce a few overs for you as well. Iona has been a little bit of a money burner this far this season, but they were able to take it to Mount St. Mary's out there in the Metro Atlantic, 87-70. And Mount St. Mary's is all of a sudden become an over team as they have really cranked up their tempo, and they're not doing a great job of guarding. As for Iona, they were able to go 8 of 17 from 3-point range in this one. As for Mount St. Mary's, they're now 7-9 against the spread. By the way, for Iona, this improved them to 8-8 against the spread. And for Iona, the big performance in this one, 26 points, 6 rebounds out of Greg Gordon. Also, another team has been all over the place against the spread. That'd be Maryland. As a matter of fact, Maryland has been terrible against the spread, but they go on the road and they get the job done against Illinois, 76-67. And we know how difficult it is to go on the road and get any sort of a win whatsoever. This helped out a Maryland team that is now 6-11 against the spread. As far as Illinois, 8-5-3 against the spread with this loss, as Marcus Domask had 26 points for Illinois, but really nobody else did anything. In Maryland, despite going 4 of 17 from 3-point range, they win the turnover battle 9-7. They also play even up on the glass with having Julian Reese be able to chip in there, 11 boards, 20 points to Jameer Young, 28 big points. So they were able to persevere in that one, and it has been very crazy what we've been seeing in college basketball recently, especially with Michigan State. Michigan State has been a team that has been all over the place as well, and Rutgers, they certainly have been one of your better under teams out there in all of college basketball, needless to say. And for Michigan State, they were able to get a win by a kind of 73-55. Rutgers just not the same team when they are away from the rack, as Rutgers does actually go 7 of 18 from 3-point range in this one. Problem was, inside the arc, they really couldn't get anything to fall as well, as they went 13 out of 36 from inside the arc. At Michigan State, they go 12 of 25 from three-point range. There wasn't even a lot of turnovers or anything in this game. Just a really slow game, as Rutgers, 12 unders to 4 overs this far this season. Meanwhile, Maryland, they have played 11 unders to 6 overs themselves. So we have been seeing a lot of interesting results out there. And then you did see an overtime game between Louisiana Tech and Old Liberty, with Liberty falling by a count of 80 to 76. This was a line that closed right around 2.5 with Louisiana Tech laying it. So it was a case where they were able to get to the window on this one, as Louisiana Tech has actually been a little bit of a good under team this season, and overtime certainly toasts that. But for Liberty, they go 10 of 27 from three-point range, but they allowed Louisiana Tech to be able to win that battle on the glass 41 to 32, and Daniel Pacho, the Pacho man, was able to give you 21 points, 9 rebounds. So we had ourselves a very fun day of college basketball, including UConn getting a win but no cover against Georgetown. This by a count of 80 to 67, and UConn has actually been quite a good over team for you thus far this season as well. This was a closing total that was more in that neighborhood, about 145.5, 146. So UConn now 9 overs, 7 unders, and a push. Meanwhile, this has been a Georgetown team that has been certainly all over the place against the spread, but they were able to have Supreme Cook be pretty supreme in this one. He was able to give the team 13 rebounds, as UConn still dealing with the injury to Jonathan Klingen. Did not play in this one, but Alex Caravan did, being able to give the team 26 points. So a little bit of a bare day of college basketball on Sunday, but it was still a fun one. And if you're looking at the trends of college basketball over the last 7 days, certainly it has been all about the favorites. 164, 148, and 5 against the spread. 52.6% hit rate for favorites over the last 7 days. Meanwhile, unders have been a little bit better than overs recently. 158 unders, 156 overs. This for an overwhelming season in general. You'll see that in a second. And home underdogs, 50-50 split over the last 7 days. 54, 54, and 2 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the season to date, more than 51% of games are going over. 1,398 overs, 1,336 unders, with plenty of pushes along the way. I believe we're at like 30 or 35 or so. Home underdogs overall, 343, 338, and 13 against the spread. Meanwhile, favorites overall hitting at nearly 51%. 1,384, 1,334, and 45 against the spread. So that's what we're seeing right now in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now let's take a look at the lay of the land in college basketball. What was a crazy week with all these upsets, and turn it forward to a little bit of Monday's action with Tristan Freeman of Bustin' Brackets. We do so next, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas. Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, Tristan Freeman. He does such good work over at Bustin' Brackets, taking a look at this game that we all know and love. And man, it has been an absolutely crazy one. It's been one that has been a little bit difficult to make sense of, but Tristan, he does a good job of helping us make sense out of some of these senseless from time to time, as I know that he's based out there in the Pittsburgh area, doing a great job looking at all 362 D1 teams. He's got a nice beat with regards to the ACC. He does a great job taking a look at the Atlantic 10, all those Pittsburgh area teams, and so much more. And you will follow my Twitter /X at HoopsNut351 all together. And Tristan, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Tristan. And Tristan, last week we saw so much craziness in college basketball. 4 out of the top 5 teams in the game went down over the span of 72 hours. And this is a question that I'm not sure anyone has a true answer to. I'm sure a lot of people have theories, but I'm not sure about a true answer. That said, what do you make out of all this, and what do you attribute all the recent upsets that we've seen in conference play to?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that a lot of these teams are playing their first set of true road games for the first time this season, and that kind of shock value always plays into it. And plus, we're not too far away from Selection Sunday, and teams got to get going when it comes to their resumes. And some teams are starting to get desperate. And when you're going up against a team with a number on them, that's a chance at a quality win. And they're just playing with more energy. And it can be hard for some of these teams like a Tennessee or Purdue who knows that they're going to be in and they're playing for a seed. And it's not going to be easy to get up for every game. And that creates a perfect storm for a team like Nebraska, who really needed that win over Purdue, to get that over a team that just really wasn't into it coming off their big win over Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely wild what we've been seeing the last few days in college basketball. And I know that a conference that you know and love very well, the Atlantic 10, it hasn't necessarily been so great for a lot of those teams that have been trying for an at-large bid, because Dayton's been taking care of business. Dayton has been able to do a very rock-solid job. They were able to get the job done a few nights ago on Friday in a rather nip-and-tuck pick'em game against Duquesne, and I thought that that was a very interesting one. But past that, a lot of these teams that were maybe looking to bust through for an at-large bid, like a Duquesne, though I thought that they were on the outside looking in. St. Joe's, they've stubbed their toes a little bit as well. And what do you make out of an Atlantic 10 that I think is just a brutally tough conference, but at the same time, if Dayton doesn't slip up in the conference tournament, there's a little bit of fear right now, I feel like, that this could be a one-bid league once again.
Well, I don't think there's fear. I just think there's a reality. Right now, none of these teams have an at-large bid. The only ones that did come into league play were Duquesne, St. Bonaventure, VCU, and St. Joe's. And just 2 weeks in, all of them have at least 2 losses. And Duquesne and St. Joe's are 0-3 right now in league play. And the reality is a lot of these teams in the A-10, like Richmond, George Mason, Rhode Island, are better than expected. These teams are not going to beat all of their games. There's going to be a lot of teams with a 9-9 record, 10-8 record. So there's really no at-large team in this conference other than Dayton. And, you know, the league from top to bottom hasn't improved, but the top just hasn't done enough. And when you compare them to the Mountain West, not enough moves were made in the non-conference to sort of have a guaranteed good resume like Dayton, and that's what's happening. But what it does show is that it's anyone's game anytime. And these going to be next couple months will be very entertaining for the conference, because now you can make a case that any of these teams can finish anywhere from 2 to 15, and the ones that set themselves up for the best will have a good opportunity in Brooklyn come the tournament.
And I think that it is so interesting what you mentioned, and this might sound a little bit cheesy here, so follow me here, but do you think that this could be a little bit of a poor man's Big Ten right now? Because in the Big Ten, typically you've got that one demonstrative team. This year it's certainly Purdue, much like it was last season, and then you've got everyone else that is sort of just there fighting it out. You don't necessarily have that bottom team, aside from Penn State actually might be that bottom team this year with regards to the Big Ten, but that said, you've got a lot of teams that are right there in the middle. Do you think the Atlantic 10 actually has a few similarities to the Big Ten with that respect?
Yeah, I mean, the Big Ten teams from, 4 to 13 haven't beaten up on each other. I agree that Penn State's the worst team, although they just beat Michigan. And right now, Michigan State's at
They might be the worst team now. Bad.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you have teams like Indiana and Michigan State who have talent but clearly flawed. You got Nebraska who can beat Purdue and then drop 90, lose to Iowa by allowing 95 points. I mean, anyone in the Big Ten can beat anyone. And you can even argue the SEC has shown the same way. The Kentucky losing on the road to Texas A&M, Tennessee losing as well. Arkansas might actually be the worst team in the league by the way they're playing. And we see LSU and Vandy can be upset fits. I mean, outside of, say, Louisville and right now UCLA, none of the power conference teams have someone that's guaranteed to lose to everyone. And that's going to create a lot of drama when it comes to teams taking potential bad losses. And it's going to be hard for teams to get winning streaks. So this is going to be a lot of, and that's part of the reason why you see a lot of parity when it comes to the transfer portal and all that stuff, is that a lot of these teams have enough talent to beat one another.
Yeah, I mean, man, it has been so intriguing, and I am so glad that you brought up Michigan as well as joining me on the show. We do have Tristan Freeman. He does absolutely amazing work over at Bustin' Brackets, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and the reason why I'm so glad that you brought up Michigan is that they are going to be playing a random Monday 9 a.m. game. I think that this is for the holiday, but that said, they're going to be playing us to Ohio State, and I mean, for Michigan, they were looking like the greatest thing since sliced bread in their first 3 games of the season. They start out 3-0. After that win against St. John's, there was a lot of buzz about this being like a potential top 10, top 15 team. Ever since then, they have went 3-10. We know how random the Big Ten can be and how big home court is, but I mean, how do you evaluate this game against Ohio State and just what has happened to Michigan as a whole? Because I can't remember seeing a team look so good coming out of the gates and then just go 3-10 inexplicably like this.
As good as they looked offensively in those 3 games, and if you want to include the secret scrimmage result against Marquette, their defense was always in question. And once teams were able to somewhat slow down Doug McDaniel, they became very vulnerable. And the reality is, between the coaching staff stuff with Juwan Howard, Doug McDaniel now being suspended for all the road games, and the fact that they just don't have a lot of depth in general, this is a team that can score with anyone, but the slightest amount of adversity is going to take them out. And they were up against Maryland, but then couldn't score in the second half. They'll be feisty, and they might end up being one of those teams that cost one of those bubble teams in the league a bit, because they can knock off anyone. But they're a bottom team, and with no defense and all the drama they're being dealt with behind the scenes, it's not a shock that they're in the position they're in.
Yeah, I mean, man, it has been just such a wild ride for Michigan. You have to wonder what is going to be happening with really that entire coaching staff moving forward. The Doug McDaniel suspension, where he's only suspended for road games. It's a mess. It's a big, giant mess, to say the least. And we do have a lot of intrigue that is going to be coming up on that Monday slate. I think that we're probably going to be getting a few of those rescheduled Metro Atlantic games, as we had a few snowouts as well. But I do want to ask you about this game as well. It's that Marquette versus Villanova game, with the Villanova team that is getting now Justin Moore back in the fold. I know you're not quite out there in the Philly area, but you are a man that is based out there in the great state of Pennsylvania. I'm sure that there's been a lot made just around the state about Kyle Neptune, sort of his status, as it's been a wobbly season to say the least for Villanova, but they come in winners of their 4 of their last 5. And for Marquette, this is a squad that comes in losing 2 straight games, and the offense just doesn't quite look the same as it was a season ago for this Marquette team.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Tyler Kolek is going to play as bad as he has in the last week, then they're going to lose to just about anyone with decent talent. I mean, he's the engine that gets the team going. And when he's not shooting well at all, then he becomes a liability, even if Cam Jones does have a good game. And considering the issues they're dealing with the bench, especially losing Sean Jones for the season, now the margin of error gets even thinner. And if you got those guys playing 35 to almost 40 minutes a night, then their bad games is just going to amplify their struggles. And Villanova is another team who can be inconsistent at times, but with more back and with some of the transfers starting to play a little better, I think that they're going to be in good shape going forward. If you're Marquette and you want any hope of winning the conference regular season title, you're going to have to start beating these good teams. It'll be a good test for them coming up.
Yeah, it is going to be a good test, and that is going to be a fun one to watch for on Monday. As joining me on the show, we do have Tristan Freeman, who does such amazing work over at Bustin' Brackets. And Tristan, it's something that we've been talking about throughout. It's been a crazy last 7 days in all of college basketball. And in terms of all the craziness that we've seen over the last week or two, is there a team or two in particular that stands out that maybe you've had to change your tune on just a little bit? I know that you're much like myself. You don't want to make bold, scorching hot takes. You don't want to be completely out on a team based on one performance, and I commend you for that. I think that that's a proper way of going about it. But has there been a team or two over the last week or two that now they're starting to pique your interest a little bit, whether that be to the positive or the negative?
Yeah, I'm starting to get really concerned about Gonzaga because they did not play well at all on the road at Santa Clara. The problem is Santa Clara didn't necessarily play that well either. You can argue that Santa Clara probably should have been up by 20-plus in the first half, but turnovers kept them in it. Gonzaga cannot rely on Anton Watson scoring 30 to keep them in the game. Not getting anything from Graham Ike or Nolan Hickman or Dusty Stromer. It puts them in a spot where they're going to need some guys to go for 20, and the WCC is good enough, at least in the top half of the league, to neutralize some of those guys. And the fact that they already have one conference loss, one is supposed to be key games, they're going to have to beat San Francisco, have to beat St. Mary's to still have an at-large case. Because right now, their best win is Syracuse. And you saw what happened with Syracuse against North Carolina. They get popped by 40. And if that's your best win in the middle of January, you're truly on the bubble.
Yeah, I mean, for this Gonzaga team, it's just not what we're used to seeing out of them. And it certainly did not help their case that Santa Clara followed that up by losing by 29 points at the half against St. Mary's at home. So, yeah, that was not helping out their case at all. And it is going to be so interesting to take a look at them moving forward. And I do think that it's also going to be interesting to take a look at the Big 12 as well, because that's a conference in which we've been seeing some very interesting results. We've got a lot of teams beating up on one another, and I know that you were alluding to this a little bit earlier. There's really not a lot of teams that are just going to be complete and utter tomato cans. And credit is due for West Virginia rising up, but that's been a rough state of affairs for them as well. But what do you make out of this Big 12 conference in which it does feel like it's going to be much of what we've seen the last few years? quite a few teams beating up on each other, with right now Texas Tech leading the way in that conference.
Yeah, I think you have the clear top teams in Kansas, Houston, and Baylor, but everyone else is very vulnerable. I mean, Texas is a team whose resume isn't that good either, ranked or not ranked. They're a team with questions. Kansas State and Texas Tech had an entertaining game on Saturday. BYU beats UCF. I mean, these are all teams that's going to beat up on each other. And I am curious who's going to be the ones that ends up going 4-14 in league play, because someone's going to have to fall to the bottom. If they do beat up on each other, then ultimately it could work out for the league because everyone has good metrics. But I am curious on what's going to happen the next couple of weeks, because someone's going to have to fall down. And it might be Oklahoma State. It could be Iowa State, even though they came off the huge win against Houston. It could very well be UCF. But then, again, they just beat Kansas. So who knows? It's going to be very entertaining on how many wins it's going to take to win the league and how many wins it's going to take to get into a tournament altogether.
Oh, it is going to be a lot of fun. And man, this is just such an interesting landscape in college basketball, Tristan. Feels like anyone can knock off anyone on any given night. Well, maybe not Mississippi Valley State over Purdue, but I think if we get past the extremes of the extremes, it's very wide open, and you're doing such a great job covering this great game that we all know and love. I know you've been putting out some great features over the last few weeks over at Bustin' Brackets as well, so going to give you the floor right here. Let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow all of your work on social media and other platforms.
Yes, so you can follow me at HoopsNut351 on X/Twitter. You can also follow at Bustin' Brackets for all the latest power rankings, conference rankings, and any news results we have coming forward.
Tristan does such a good job taking a look at this tremendous game. It has been a wild season, and he has buckled up for the ride and has been able to do a great job of being able to cover it all. And every single time he joins this podcast, lends such good insights. Big thanks to Tristan for joining me on Cusca Seeps, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. It is always a pleasure to get Tristan Freeman aboard. He does such great work over at Bustin' Brackets, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. Every single time he joins this podcast, he lends some great insights, and no doubt about it, things are getting so interesting with so many teams defending their home floor in conference play, and that means that we've been seeing a lot of upsets. Tristan has been able to do a great job being able to decipher it all. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GN_41. We're going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games in the bigger conferences first, and then these are the games that are going to be at the bottom. Games involving independents. So I'm looking at you, Chicago State, the SWAC, the MEAC, the Northeastern Conference, the America East. If we were to have any games from the Southland as well, which I'm pretty sure that there are some, the Patriot League, and I think I'm forgetting one, the Big South. Those are going to be at the bottom, so we've got you guys all covered there, and let's get things started with a very fascinating game of 861-862 on the betting board. Noon Eastern Time tip as Ohio State hits the road to face off against Michigan. Michigan finds themselves as 1-point underdog to a pick'em. Total on this game is 147. It's a Michigan team that's on an almighty slide. We were talking about Tristan. It looked like this team was a bee's knees after they started out 3-0, but defense has been rather brutal. I mean, in every facet of it. They're not guarding well from 2-point range. They're not guarding well from 3-point range. They're not generating a lot of turnovers in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a bunch that they are outside the top 225 right now. I mean, it is all sorts of awful. That said, this is an Ohio State team that I feel like some of their defensive metrics were built a little bit on sand, and this has been an Ohio State team that has really struggled when they've been away from home as well. This is an Ohio State team that is 65th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but last 3 games giving up north of 11 points more per 100 possessions than they did towards the beginning part of the season. Do you think that Ohio State should be able to win the rebound battle? You've got 4 of your top 5 scorers give you at least 5.3 rebounds per game, and Jamison Battle has been really undervalued for the team. He's been able to supply 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 46.5% from three-point range. It is an Ohio State team that they shoot about 39% from distance, so I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job there, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Michigan responds to having Doug McDaniel back in the fold, because he's suspended only for road games. I have no idea how that works. I can't remember the last time I've seen a suspension quite like that, but it is what it is. But I do think that Olivier Combois is going to be able to do a solid job down low, double-figure score for Michigan, and he's a part of a Michigan team that is in the top 90 nationally with regards to rebound rate. It's not quite the same as Ohio State, as it's an Ohio State team that's 23rd in this category. You do have Zed Key being able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and then Felix Lapara, 2.5 blocks per contest as well. This is an Ohio State team, though, that they do have a little bit of shakiness with their backcourt defense. The offense, with having Bruce Thornton and company, they've been able to do a relatively solid job, but I do think that this could be a case where Mr. McDaniel, even though he does turn the ball over a little bit, this is a Michigan team that they do turn the ball over right around about 12.5 times per contest, can be able to do a relatively solid job, and this is a Michigan team that you know that they're going to give up their points, but you also know that this is a Michigan offense that is completely different at home rather than on the road, and that split of them scoring 10 more points per 100 possessions is probably going to widen even more because of everything that's happening with McDaniel. Meanwhile, it's an Iowa State team that they've been a relative constant both at home and on the road with regards to their offense. I do shade down my totals a little bit for these early games. I did set my total at 147. I'm starting to see some 146.5s pop up, and at that number, I would be taking a look at the over. Even the 147s I am seeing juices on the under, so at a 147 or less with relatively good juice, I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. But I do think that for Michigan, despite the fact that it's been all sorts of awful for this team, despite the fact that they just have not been able to get online, I do think that they're going to do a solid job on the glass. I do think that they're going to take it to an Iowa State team that they do a good job protecting the ball. They don't generate any turnovers whatsoever, and for Iowa State, they've given up 70 plus points in each of their last 4 games, while the Michigan defense has looked a little bit better, giving up 73 points or fewer to their last 3. So did set my total at 147. Here at the 147 with favorable juice or better, looking at the over, and with Michigan, set them as a 2-point favorite. Going to be taking them as a pick'em / a money line underdog. 863, 864 on the betting board. Dartmouth hits the road to face off against Princeton. Princeton is a favorite of between 18.5 and 19 points, and your total on this game is 135. Dartmouth is right now your best under team in all of college basketball. All but 2 of their games have gone under the total, and this is a Princeton team that, while they're not supreme with their defense, they certainly have been able to do a relatively solid job keeping things out in front of them. Top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against one of the saddest Dartmouth teams with regards to offense in all of college basketball. So I did sell my total at 133.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Additionally, you're just not going to get a lot of possessions in this game. This is a Princeton team that is currently 345th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Dartmouth team that's well outside the top 250 with that regard as well. And for Dartmouth, they're not quite Mississippi Valley State bad with regards to their offense, but in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 358th in all of college basketball. They have not been able to get Ryan Cornish online, who was a nice double-figure scorer for the team a season ago. He's now been supplying the team with right around about 7 to 8 points per contest. They've been dealing with injuries, and even with their guys coming back in the fold, like Dusan Niskovich, along with Brandon Mitchell-Day, these 2 guys have been able to combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game. Mitchell-Day, 10 points, and Niskovich, 14.5 points per contest. The team just can't shoot from 3. They're shooting 26% from the outside, and this is a Princeton team that has all sorts of versatility. Top-heavy team with regards to their starting 5, really consuming most of the minutes. You've got Caden Pierce down low, giving you about 9 boards, 3 assists per contest. Absolutely love what Xavier Lee is doing at the point guard spot, by the way, shooting 39.5% from 3, 18 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists. Recognize that this team is playing a little bit slower, which helps out with the turnovers, but just 9.4 turnovers per game. In terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, that is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. And they do go up against a Dartmouth team that, with regards to their perimeter defense, they are certainly giving it up, allowing opponents to shoot 39% from 3-point range. But I do think that Princeton is going to be able to play enough defense to be able to keep this one under. At home, opponents are shooting just 28.8% from 3-point range against them. Dartmouth just really doesn't have a lot of hope of being able to get second chances as well with Pierce down low. And then additionally, you've been able to have Matt Aloko be able to give you about 3.5 assists, 13 points per contest. It's a Dartmouth team that has really been getting careless with the ball, turning it over about 12.5 times per contest with their slow tempo. That's just very costly for this team with having a lot of guys in and out of the fold. And for this Dartmouth team, against D1 competition, because they played against a few non-D1 teams, but against D1 competition, this team has yet to exceed the 68-point plateau. I just don't see where the scoring is coming from. You've got a Princeton team that the last time they gave up north of 58 points, they did so against Delaware once, but they've given up 58 points or fewer in every one of their games except for that Delaware game since December 10th. So in the last 35 days, they've given up north of 58 points once. Now, they've also gotten to at least 84 in every one of those games, but I do think that the Dartmouth defense, which they themselves have given up fewer than 70 points in 3 of their last 4 games, holds up here. But for Princeton, I think that they just continue the demise of this Dartmouth offense. I set my total at a 133.5, diving in on the under. And with Princeton, willing to lay up to 19 with them, set them as a 19.5 point favorite. 865, 866 on the betting board. Penn is going to be hitting the road face-off against Cornell. Cornell is 7.5 to an 8 point favorite. Your total is between 159.5 and 160. Set my total at 163.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. This is a Cornell team that is playing no defense whatsoever. 208th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, actually giving up 4.1 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than on the road. And this is a Cornell team that has been a flamethrower with regards to their offense. They do turn the ball over right around about 14 to 15 times per contest, but it is because they are playing at a top 50 mark in terms of total possessions per game. And for Cornell, they are averaging about 119.9 points per 100 possessions at home. Take a look at points scored on a per possession basis at home. This is a top 30 team in all of college basketball, going up against a Penn bunch that, even with Jordan Dingle now out of the fold, they've been able to do a really good job of being able to crank up their offense as well. This is a Penn bunch that has been able to get quite a bit of production out of someone like a Clark Slager, who has become the main man for this team. 17.5 points per contest. He's got alongside of him Mr. Perkins, who's been able to give you about 15 points per contest. Heather Perkins shooting 37.5% from three-point range, and it's a Penn team as a whole. They're shooting 40% from three-point range. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of an inevitable regression with this, but for Penn, they've done a really nice job of being able to put the ball in the basket, and it's a Penn team that is not doing such a great job of being able to guard the three as well, which is where Cornell finds a lot of their production. Penn, in a roadside court environment, allowing opponents to shoot 36.6% from three-point range. For Cornell, you really don't have anyone other than Guy Ragland that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game, but darn near every one of their top 7 scores do give you at least 3.5 rebounds per game. It is a Cornell team that they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot 36.4% from three-point range at home. I do think that you're going to be able to get a relatively good performance here out of Nick Spinoso as well for Penn. He's one of the more versatile players out there on the floor. He's been able to supply the team with about 10 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, and this team has really been able to elevate with regards to their offense ever since Sam Brown has been in the fold as well. Missed 4 games a little bit earlier in the season, but shoots 47% from three-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 14 plus points in 3 out of the team's last 5 games as well. I think you're looking at an old classic shootout with a Penn bunch that they have certainly been giving up the points, at least 73 points surrendered in 3 out of their last 4 games. And this is a Cornell team that they just refuse to not get to 75. The last time they were held below 75 points, they were going up against Syracuse. That was in very early December, and I believe that that's the only game this season that they have scored fewer than 74 points. So I do think that Cornell going to be able to put up a relatively big number. I think that they're going to be giving up their points as well. With Cornell, you don't have that one primary scorer right now. Chris Mannon, who's averaging 11 points per game, leads the way, but you've got 5 separate guys that give you at least 7.3 points per contest, 6 different guys that give you at least 9.3 points per contest, holds greater than some of its parts approach. So I do think that Cornell is able to pull out this game outright. But I do think that Penn going to be able to hold in there with the way that they have been able to really stroke it from three-point range, and the way that Cornell is not really guarding when they're at home. So did set my line at 5.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Penn. Did set my total at 163.5. It's also looking at the over. 867, 868 on the betting board. It is Brown. And what can Brown do for you? Well, they lose by fewer than 3 points. They'll make you money as they're on the road facing off against Harvard. This was a line that when I started up this podcast breakdown about 7 or 8 minutes ago, it was at right around 4. Now we're seeing Harvard laying between 2.5 and 3.5 points. Dawn's game is laying between 139 and 139.5. It is a Harvard team that is dealing with a bunch of ailment, but even with that, I'm going to be willing to lay the points with Harvard, set them as an 8.5 point favorite. And the big reason why I've restored Harvard to a lot of prior value is that now you've got Malik Mack back in the fold. Mack was out because he was dealing with mono, and in his first game back against Princeton did not look like himself. He had just 8 points in that one overall for the season, averaging 19 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, shooting 44.5% from 3-point range. He's now had more than a full week ever since that game, so now he should be able to get his sea legs back under him. You still are dealing with a little bit of an injury, though, to your main big man in Justice Ojabor. We have not seen him really since the beginning of the month of December. Was logging about 7.5 rebounds per game, but this team should be able to make do without him. You've been able to get good production out of Jason Mopara down low, 5.5 boards, 18 points. He's a combo player that shoots 36.5% from 3-point range, and this is a Harvard team that has been completely different with their offense when they've been at home rather than when they've been on the road. Harvard is shooting darn near 40% from 3-point range at home. That slashes by more than 6% when they are in a roadside shoot court environment. For Harvard, they have been scoring about 9 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road, and they're going up against a Brown team that has been slowing down their tempo. They were playing a little bit too fast for their own good to begin the season, but this is just not the same Brown defense that we saw a season ago. Last year, Brown was one of your better mid-major defenses in all of college basketball because you did have Nana Owusu-Anane doing such a solid job down low, being able to give you 9 boards per contest, and he's still been able to provide that down low, but Brown is now 184th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's just really hard to be able to overcome that when Keno Lilly Jr., each of the last 2 years, shot darn near 40% from 3-point range and taken the nosedive that he has with regards to his overall shooting. He's still giving you about 19.5 points per contest, but he's now shooting 34.3% from 3-point range. Ricardo Zoo, 18 plus points in each of the last 4 games, but who's going to be able to help him out in the backcourt is a question. You've got about 9 points per contest out of Aaron Cooley. He's been able to shoot 41% from 3-point range, has been a little bit more consistent recently, but it is a Brown team that they turn the ball over nearly 13 times per contest and they shoot 64% at the free throw line, especially in a tight line like this. You got to have a little bit of concern there. You do have Kalu Enya, who's been able to give you 7 rebounds per game, so you should be able to help out a Brown team that I think is going to be able to do a solid job on the glass. This is a Harvard team that, especially without Ojabor, they've had their issues. They're 260th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rates. So Brown, they've got an advantage there at about 102nd, but that said, this is also a Brown team that, with everything that they've got down low, they really neglect to be able to guard the 3-point arc. They are allowing opponents to shoot 36.2% from 3-point range from distance. It's a Harvard team that they've locked down from 3-point range. Opponents at home shooting just 30.1% from the outside against them. I do think that that's going to allow Harvard to take control of this game and get the job done with now getting a nice clean bill of health for Mr. Mack. So this is a spot where I did set Harvard as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number and did set my total at a 140.5. Harvard just a little bit of a different offense at home rather than on the road. So you're at the 139.5. Looking at the over, looks like this total might be ticking up just a little bit. So if you can keep it under 140, looking at the over and going to be willing to lay with Harvard, 869, 870 on the betting board. Battle of Georges. George Mason, it's a road face-off against George Washington, our nation's first president. George Washington, 1.5 to 2.5 point home underdog. Settles between 145 and 145.5. Did set my line at a 2. I'm mostly seeing 2.5 out there, and at the 2.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with George Washington, and I'd rather take 2.5 rather than lay 1.5 in this spot personally. I really like what I've seen out of this George Washington team. It is a top-heavy bunch, but you've got James Bishop, who's able to lead the way with 18.5 points and 40% 3-point shooting, and then you've got a pair of guys in Maximus Edwards, Garrett Johnson, combined to shoot nearly 42.5% from 3. Both of these guys have been able to give you combined about 28 points per game, and though this is a George Mason team that is probably going to be able to get their tempo, probably be able to slow this game down a little bit, it's a George Washington team that's much improved on defense. George Washington, a top 75 team in the country, turns points allowed on a per possession basis, allowing 11.1 points fewer per 100 possessions this year than they did a season ago, and they really do play much better defense when they're at home. This is a bunch that at home they are averaging right around 19.2 points fewer per 100 possessions rather than in a roadside shoot court environment, and this is a George Mason team that they do give up right around 12.6 points more per 100 possessions when they are away from home. Keyshawn Hall has been solid down low for this team, 16.5 points, 9.5 boards for a George Washington team that has a little bit of a tough time guarding the 3-point arc. They have to go up against a George Mason team that has been able to shoot it really well from 3-point range at right around about 36%, but all of George Washington's 3-point shooting defensive woes come on the road. They allow opponents to shoot just 28.7% from 3-point range at home, 37.2% away from home. Meanwhile, George Mason is allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% 45.5% from three-point range in a road/neutral court environment. It is a George Mason team that does not really rip the ball away as well. While they do a relatively solid job with their defense, they're not going to force a lot of turnovers. They should have guys like Amari Kelly along with Darius Maddox being able to get some open looks combined for 25.5 points per game. Both of these guys shooting north of 40% from three-point range, but for George Washington, 3 out of your top 4 scorers give you north of 6 boards per contest. I do think that they are going to do a good job against the likes of Keyshawn Hall and company. It is a George Washington team that, with regards to their rebound rate, it can be a little bit touch and go. They're about 176th in the country, and George Mason, they're more around 34th, but I do think that they hang in there. I do think that George Washington on their own floor, despite being slowed down by a very grimy George Mason team, they're going to be able to in there. I think that both of these teams are going to be able to sink a lot of open shots. I did set my total at 146. You're at 145, 145.5. Looking at the over, anything of a 2.5 or more, take the points for George Washington. 871, 872 on the betting board. Villanova, it's the road face-off against Marquette. Marquette does find themselves as 5 to 6 point favorites. Totals between 142.5 and 143. So Marquette is a 7.5 point favorite. Going to be one to lay the number. Now, Tyler Kolek has not played well recently. There's no debating that. But I do think that he's going to be able to kick it up a little bit more against this Villanova bunch. It is a Marquette team that has been dealing with a few ailments as well. I know that they're going to be without a few other guys for the rest of the season. They've been dealing with the injury to Stevie Mitchell, which, that's been a little bit touch and go for them. They've been able to get him back in the fold. But that said, when it comes to Tyler Kolek, this guy has been incredible with regards to being able to dole out the ball. Still giving you about 6.5 assists to about 3 turnovers per game. Most recently has had 3+ turnovers in each of the last 5 games. Needs to cut down there, and a combined 7 points in the last 2 games. That's not going to cut it, but his facilitation still has been there, and that is going to allow for guys like a Javid Joplin to be able to sink quite a few threes. I do think that they still have quite a bit of depth with regards to the backcourt, despite some of the injuries that they're going through, to be able to sink those open shots. And also Ogadero has really been able to help out this Marquette team down low, because for Marquette, they had one big kryptonite last season, and that was the fact that they were right around like 300th in the country with regards to rebound rate. And it's not to say that they've been amazing this year at 232nd, but at home they've got about a 52% rebound rate going up against a Villanova team that they've got Eric Dixon, they've got Tyler Burton. Both of these guys have been able to combine for about 13 or so rebounds per contest. It's a Villanova team that overall is 65th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Good news for them as well is that Justin Moore is back in the fold. He's able to give you some nice facilitation for a team that has really been relying upon Hakeem Hart for that. He's been able to do a nice job, give you about 8 points, 4 boards. When you had Justin Moore out of the fold, he was able to give the team double figures in pretty much all but one of those games. Now he's back to being a little bit more of a reserve. He was giving the team about 2.5, 3 assists per contest, while Moore was back out of the fold. But that's that for Villanova. The one thing you know that they're going to do is that they're going to be smart. They shoot 82% the free throw line. They turn the ball over 10 times per contest. But you also know this about Villanova. Villanova can very easily get torched from three-point range. That has been an issue for this team really ever since Kyle Neptune has taken over, as Villanova is allowing opponents to shoot north of 34% from three-point range, 216th in all of college basketball. And this is a Marquette team that has been much better with regards to their defense. Opponents are shooting just 31.1% from three-point range against them, and Marquette, in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, 33rd in all of college basketball in their home games. They're giving up about 13.2 points fewer per 100 possessions rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And for this Villanova team, credit where credit is due, they've been giving up about 1.7 points fewer per 100 possessions when they've been on the road rather than at home. Overall, this is a bunch that they're clocking in about 40th with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But I do think that we are going to be seeing Tyler Kolek get back to his good offensive form. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be close enough for some late game falling as well, as I did set my line at a 7.5. When you're down like 6-7 points with a minute remaining, you know that means a march to the free throw line. I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to find enough open threes to be able to get this total over. So did set my total 143.5. Looking over on with Marquette, willing to lay up to 7 with them. 873, 874 on the betting board. LaSalle, it's the road face-off against St. Joe's. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's, as 10.5 to 11.5 point favorites. Your total is between 149 and 149.5 with St. Joe's. I did set them as favorites of 10.5 points. Now that we're getting to 11 and 11.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with LaSalle. LaSalle is outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're really going to need to guard the three-point arc, but their three-point shooting defense has been much better on the road rather than at home. LaSalle overall 305th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but that's 38.6% when they're at home, 33.5% in a road/neutral court environment. And for St. Joe's, they've been one of the most supreme defenses in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot just 28.9% from 3-point range at home. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a fall off here, and I do think that they're going to have a tough time matching up with a LaSalle team that they just do such a good job with their balance in the backcourt. Khalil Brantley has been able to give you 14 plus points per contest, does a really nice job of being able to dole it out as you've got 3 separate guys that do give you north of 3 assists per contest. It's a big reason why LaSalle has been very consistent with their offense. They only rank about 182nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but because they're able to give you so many different looks, they average about the same amount of points per possession when they're at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. It is a St. Joe's team that's in the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for LaSalle, they don't rely too much on their 3-point shooting. They just rely upon being consistent, 9.9 turnovers per game. They really embody their coach Frank Dunphy in that they are smart. Now, Jamari Breakus, he's your top scorer from 3-point range, shooting 43% from distance, 5 assists, 14.5 points per game, and then Anwar Gill is sort of that stat sheet stuffer. He's able to give you 11 points, 3.5 assists per contest, and to the credit of LaSalle, even though they're not like some high turnover team or anything like that in terms of forcing those turnovers, Brantley, Breakus, Gill, they're all able to combine for about 4.6, 4.7 steals per contest, so they've done a solid job there. Now, where LaSalle is really going to lose this battle is down low. You've got Deshaun Shepard, who's giving you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and Rakais Josias, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, he's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, and that is about it. LaSalle, with regards to their rebound rate, they're clocking in 296th, and for St. Joe's, you've been able to get quite a bit more out of Rasheer Fleming. Fleming has now been able to give you about 7 rebounds per contest, chips in there a double-figure amount of points, so he's going to be a little bit of hard guard in this one for a St. Joe's team that's more around 140th with regards to rebound rate. St. Joe's, they do a relatively solid job taking care of the ball. 11.5 turnovers per game. Lynn Greer III has done a very good job of helping out Eric Reynolds, your main scorer. Reynolds, 3 boards, 3 assists, 18 points on 39.5% 3-point shooting. Greer is able to shoot about 33% from distance with about 4.3 assists per contest. Xavier Brown, he's been able to shoot 48% from the outside. Should expect a little bit of regression there, but this is a bit of a top-heavy team that has been relying upon Christ Edesonko down low for the longest of time. Now they're getting him back in the fold after he was missing for quite a while, but hasn't been himself on the boards ever since he has come back. So I do think that LaSalle, despite the fact that they're going to get decimated down low, I do think that their backcourt going to be able to keep them in this game. Did set St. Joe's as a 10.5-point favorite, so we'll take 11 plus, and did set my total 144.5. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be grinded down just a little bit more with LaSalle doing a much better job in terms of being able to guard the 3-point arc in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. And for LaSalle, they have been held to 66 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be taking the points with the Explorers. 875, 876 is going to be the DK Network right up pick. This is Iowa on the road facing off against Minnesota. Minnesota opens up as the underdog of a point. Now they're the 1-point favorite. Total on this game is 158.5, and I think the correct move is being made, and for Minnesota, they are my DK Network right to pick. If they go back to being an underdog, I'm just going to be taking a look at their money line. At the current spot, I would just be laying the 1, as I did set them as a 5-point favorite. Minnesota has been a flamethrower against the spread, covering all but 2 of their games this far this season. Best cover rate in all of college basketball, but that's not really the reason why I'm taking them. The biggest reason why is that Iowa's not the same team when they're on the road rather than at home. For Iowa, this is the 2nd straight year in which your offense takes a nosedive of more than 20 points scored fewer per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. This is just an untrustworthy Iowa team when they leave Carver Hawkeye Arena. You've got Ben Krikke, he's able to give you 16.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest, but they go up against a Minnesota team that's done a really good job on the glass. Entering into Sunday, a top 40 team with regards to rebound rate, Minnesota does a relatively solid job of not allowing a ton of second chances. Meanwhile, Iowa, in a road/neutral court environment, they do allow opponents to grab offensive rebounds on 31.8% of their missed shots. That is outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. You've got Peyton Sanford, who shoots 45% from 3-point range, but again, let's go back to it. Iowa not shooting the same on the road/in a neutral court environment as they do at home. Iowa, one of the better teams at being able to take care of the ball just pretty much in any environment. Even though their turnovers do kick up a little bit when they are away from home, this has still been a team that's been pretty solid at being able to take care of the ball. And overall for the season. Iowa is shooting about 35.5% from three-point range. That said, this is an Iowa team that, again, when they're at home, they shoot about 37% from three-point range, 32.5% from three-point range in a roadside shoot court environment, and they're not the only team with splits. Minnesota gives up 23.7 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. For this Minnesota team, in terms of their three-point shooting defense, they allow opponents to shoot just 31.8% from distance at home, 39.1% on the road. The barn is a very difficult place to play, and so much of the reason why this Minnesota team has been so much better this year is the coming of age of Elijah Hawkins, who, entering into Sunday, was leading all qualifying D1 players with regards to assists per game at 7.7. Last year, when he was at Howard, he was leading the country in a different category. That'd be turnovers per game. He was averaging north of 4 per contest. He has kicked that down to about 2.7 turnovers per game with about 7.7 assists per game. It's a big reason why Minnesota's averaging 18.1 points more per 100 possessions this year than they did a season ago. You still have Dawson Garcia, who at 6'10", 6'11", is able to be Mr. Versatile for this team. 16.5 points, 7.5 boards. He doesn't even really shoot it well from three-point range, but this is a Minnesota team that they've got other guys. They're able to stroke it from three-point range. Mike Mitchell Jr. has been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. You get 39% out of Cam Christie. These two guys have been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. It's an Iowa team in which the ancillary pieces are very touch and go. You've been able to get about 11 points per contest out of Owen Freeman, but really aside from Peyton Sanford along Ben Krikke, the battle on glass is very inconsistent for the team. Tony Perkins to be able to give you about 4 assists per contest, but that said, this Iowa team, they just diminish so much when they're away from home. It's an Iowa team that they just continue to bleed points upon points, as this team has now given up at least 74 points in each of their last 6 games, and it's a Minnesota team that, in their own right, they've actually been very solid on defense, giving up 71 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, and if you want to go back a little bit further, they have given up 71 points or fewer in 6 out of their last 7 games. I do think that they're going to bog down this Iowa offense. I do think that Iowa's still probably going to be able to get there like 75 or so, but I do think that Minnesota just lays it on them. My DK Network Write-Up pick, that is going to be on Minnesota laying what is currently 1 point, and with regards to the total, did set it at 161. I could see this game being close enough for late game following, but I do think that the Big Ten home teams and this Minnesota team, they just keep it rolling. So going to be taking a look at the over, and my write-up, that is on Minnesota laying the point as I'm seeing it right now. 877, 878 on the betting board. Yale is playing against Columbia. Columbia does find themselves as an underdog of 12.5 to 13.5 points. Total on this game is 145.5 with Columbia. Did set them as an underdog of 12 points. I'm going to be willing to take those points. It is a Yale team that's much better on offense this season than they were a season ago. The defense has diminished. So last year, Yale was a top 40 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are now well outside the top 125. It is a Yale squad that they still do a relatively solid job on the glass, but you'd like to see that be a little bit better. Yale's about 126th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You've had Danny Wolf be able to step up for the team, 14 points, 9 boards, shoots 44.5% from 3. It is a Yale team that they do a nice job not beating themselves, shooting 73% at the free throw line, 10.5 turnovers per game with John Polidikis, shooting also 40% from three-point range. He chips in there 12 points per contest. You've got another 40+% three-point shooter in August Mahoney, who's able to give you about 9.5 points per game, but this is a Columbia team that they're able to stroke it from three-point range as well, and they've got a nice point guard in Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa, who's been able to give you 3 assists, about a steal and a half, 13.5 points per game on 38% three-point shooting. And for Columbia, I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression for the team moving forward, but they're shooting 38.8% from three-point range, going up against a Yale team that at home is allowing opponents to shoot 39% from the outside. That is pretty ghastly. That is a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball. It is a Columbia team that they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to win that battle from the perimeter, because down low you really don't have a lot of rebounding with this team. Blair Thomas stands right around 6'8", 6'9". He's got a little bit of versatility. Chips in there about 8 to 9 points, 4 boards per contest. It's a Columbia team that's about 171st in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate, but for Columbia, they're allowing opponents to shoot overall 31.7% from 3, top 95 mark in all of college basketball. Really, other than Thomas, you don't have a lot of guys that do a great job of being able to hit the boards, but I do like what you're able to get out of Zeke Adine Badri. He's a little bit of a foreign gentleman that has come in. He's been able to give the team right around about 4 boards, 6.5 points per contest, so he does a solid job being able to float things for this team as well. It is a Columbia team that also has Blair Thomas shooting north of 53% from three-point range. Once again, do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression, but Columbia, they play rather up-tempo. They only turn the ball over about 12 times per contest, like what I'm seeing there, and this is a Columbia team that has been very much a constant with their offense. For Columbia, they have gone to at least 78 points in now each of their last 5 games. The last time Columbia was held below 71 points, you have to go all the way back to the back half of November. Meanwhile, this is a Yale team that they themselves have been playing a little bit better with regards to their defense. If you look at regulation and regulation only, because that hour game went to overtime, they have held now 6 out of their last 7 opponents to 70 points or fewer. The lone exception was going up against Kansas, so it's a little bit of a situation of something he's got to give, but I do think that the offense going to be winning out in this spot. Did semi-total 146 here at a 145.5. Looking at the overhand, we'll take a shot here on Columbia, set them as a 12-point underdog. 879, 880 on the betting board. Boston College plays us in Notre Dame. Notre Dame finds themselves as an underdog of 7.5 to 8 points. So on this game between 135 and 136. Set Boston College as an 8-point favorite. Here at the 7.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. Do have to admit, I've been very impressed by the turnaround that we've been seeing out of Notre Dame, and it's all been on the defensive side of things. This is a Notre Dame team that is still well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and even in this recent run, it's not been a Notre Dame team that has been lighting the world on fire with regards to their three-point shooting. 329th in all of college basketball with regards to three-point shooting percentage. That diminishes all the way down to 23.9% in a road/shoot record environment. That is the bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. But for Boston College, even though they're going to be most likely without Quinn Post once again, and that is a big-time injury, and that has been factored in with regards to this line. And Quinn Post, he has been awesome. He's been able to give you about 17 points, 7.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting it well from three-point range at about 44% from the outside. This is still a Boston College team that, without him against Clemson, they still have more than enough offense to get it done. It was really the defense that let them down, as in that game, you were able to get some really good production right around about 18 points per contest out of Jaden Zachary. Keep in mind, 2 years ago, he shot nearly 50% from three-point range. He has shot it not so well from three-point range this season, but that's because he's got an assist-to-turnover ratio of 3. He's really been able to do a nice job there. And then the main man that was taking the role of one Quinn Post, Elijah Strong, he was strong in that game. He had 14 points in that one, and I do think that this is a guy with a little bit of upside, not going to be as versatile as Quinn Post, but at the same time, I don't think that the drop-off is as big as a lot of people would want to make it out to be. You do have Claudel Harris, who's been able to do a really solid job out there in the backcourt as well. 15.5 points per contest, and the main kryptonite of this Boston College team is giving up the 3. They are 297th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but you just don't have anyone on this Notre Dame team that's going to be able to take advantage of that shotty defense, as you've got a Notre Dame team that I was alluding to the bad three-point shooting numbers, and Marcus Burton is right now leading all qualifying players in Division I college basketball in terms of turnovers per game. He does give you about 16 points. He chips in there 4 assists, but the 3.9 to 4 turnovers per game is pretty ghastly. You've got Brandon Shrewsbury, who's really been able to kick it up for this team. He's giving you 8.5 points, and he had that big 25-point performance against Georgia Tech to derail that DK Network write-up, but that's it for this Notre Dame team. You still don't necessarily have a ton down low either. Kiba Njai, who followed Micah Shrewsbury over from Penn State, has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per contest, but this is still a Notre Dame team that doesn't really do a great job of being able to find a way to be able to generate offense. They're about 100th in the country with regards to rebound rate, more specifically 98th, and this is a Boston College team that they're clocking in right around 160th, but Boston College does a relatively solid job being able to find those second and third chances. Shea Davis for this Notre Dame team has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per contest, but I think even with Quinn Post right now dealing with illness/ailment, I do think the Boston College finds a way to get it done against a Notre Dame team that I think is going to do a good job with their defense. This is a Notre Dame team that they've now given up 68 points or fewer in really each of their last 5 games, and in regulation, because their game against Georgetown, that was a game that went to overtime. They have given up fewer than 70 points in, I believe now, each of their last 12 games. It might actually be each of their last 13 games, and it's a Boston College team that they've been able to get to at least 78 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. Did semi-total 134. I do think that the defense wins out. I just don't think Notre Dame produces enough offense in this spot. So you're at the 7.5, going to be one lay it with Boston College, and going to be looking at the under semi-total 134. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 881, 882. Hampton is going to be playing us in North Carolina A&T, and A&T does find themselves as an underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. 151.5 to 152.5 is your total line with A&T. I did set them as a underdog of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Hampton. This is a Hampton squad that has been able to do a very good job of being able to find a way to screw up games, and so is North Carolina A&T. And for both of these teams, They are well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. The question becomes, can you get something other than Landon Glasper offensively for North Carolina A&T? Because Glasper has done actually a really good job as that number one scorer. 20 points per contest, doesn't shoot it well from three-point range. And for North Carolina A&T, they actually only turn the ball over about 9.5 times per contest. They just don't have anyone that's able to shoot on this team, as their shooting is collected 29.6% from three, 39.9% from the floor. And it's a North Carolina A&T team that 362 D1 teams. They are 361st with regards to rebound rate and dead stinking last in rebound rate when they're in a road/shoot court environment. That's not great, to say the least. Now, they have been able to get in a little bit of reinforcement, as now they've actually got someone down low that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game in Jason Murphy. He's been able to chip in for the team right around about 7.5 rebounds per game, 9+ boards in 3 of the last 4 games. That's certainly helpful, but this is a Hampton team that, even though they're not the Mona Lisa Vitos down low being able to hit the glass, I do think that Curry Mullen is going to be able to win that battle. 15.5 points, 9.5 boards. And for Hampton, the question becomes, when does Jordan Nesbitt finally step up for the team? He's been back for 8 games after he dealt with an ailment to begin the season, but after last year, he was the team's top scorer, 15 points, 6.5 boards. He just has been a shell of himself, perhaps getting 15 points, 9 rebounds in that game against William & Mary wakes him up, because prior to that, I think he had scored in double figures perhaps once. But you do have in the backcourt Tedrick Wilcox, Tristan Maxwell, who have been able to give you about 21.5 points per contest, shooting in that neighbor about 34 to 35% from three-point range. Hampton does need to clean up the turnovers with about 14 per contest, but this is an A&T team that they do not do a good job of being able to generate those turnovers. And for A&T, they are just getting destroyed in terms of allowing open three-point looks. They're allowing opponents to shoot 38.8% from three-point range in a road/shoot court environment. Not like this Hampton team has been anything amazing. They are overall about 256th in the country. That said, at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot more like 32.5% from distance. So I do think that they're going to be able to do just a little bit of a better job here, and I do think that for Hampton, getting a bit more out of Jordan Nesbitt is going to be the difference. So I did set my total at a 155.5. I certainly do think that you're going to get plenty of offense looking at the over. And when it comes to this Hampton bunch, did set them as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. We do have 2 writing games before we hit the bonus. These were the games that were supposed to be played on Sunday. Inclement weather postponed them out there in the Metro Atlantic, so they're a little bit out of time order. But that said, we go to 883, 884. Siena's on the road facing off against Niagara. Niagara, a 6 to a 7 point favorite with your total 141.5. I did set Niagara as an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Siena squad that is playing quite a bit better right now that Sean Duru-Gordon is in the full. Duru-Gordon has been absolutely amazing for the team. Coming in from Austin Peay, was a former top 300 recruit of Missouri, and in 5 games in the fold, he has given the team 23.8 points, 8.2 rebounds per game. It has yielded 0 wins whatsoever, and the only time that the team has broken the 70-point plateau with him out there on the floor, despite his really good production, was when they played against a Cornell team that they just bleed points. So that's very interesting to take a look at, to say the least. You've got really a Siena squad that just keeps on turning the ball over left and right. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Siena is currently outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Siena team that they just do not do a good job of being able to guard the three-point arc, allowing opponents to shoot 37.8% from distance in a road/shoot court environment. Now, it's a Niagara team that is also now outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, allowing opponents to shoot 41.7% from three-point range in their home games. So you've got issues on both sides, but I just don't think that Siena is going to be able to really take advantage. Other than Duru-Gordon, you don't have a single guy that averages more than 5.1 points per contest, shooting above 26.7% from three-point range. Michael Ealy has been able to give you 14 points per contest, but he's really struggled with his perimeter shooting, and it's not like the Siena team has been able to do anything magical down low. So Harlan Obiona, who for this Niagara team stands right around 7 feet tall, he's able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. He should be able to win that battle down low. It is a Niagara team that leaves a little bit of something to be desired on the glass. They're about 203rd in the country with regards to the rebound rate. Siena's actually 118th. A lot of that is because they missed so many shots that they're able to pull in their rebounds, but that said, when it comes to this Niagara team, you've been able to get a little bit more out of Luke Bumbelow, shooting about 37.5% from 3, 10 points per contest. And this is a Niagara team that I was alluding to Siena and the way that they just are not guarding the three-point arc to save their lives. I think that this is going to be doomsday for them, because you've got a Niagara bunch that's shooting about 39.5% from three-point range. You've got Obeng Mensa, who's got some versatility, 5.5 boards, 11.5 points. He's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. Your top scorer, Ahmad Henderson, has been able to give you 13 points. He shoots in that neighborhood about 37.5% from three-point range. And for Niagara, it's very constant with the team. They shoot 39% from three-point range at home. They shoot 39% from from three-point range in a road/neutral-court environment, and they've been doing this even with Coane Marble, the transfer from Wyoming, really not giving you much with about 7 points per contest. So he and Dre Bullock are now combined to shoot about 45% from the outside. Niagara, they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, and I think that that's going to be all the difference. It's a Niagara team that has gotten to at least 75 points in each of their last 3 games and 71 plus in 4 of their last 5. Meanwhile, it's a Siena squad that even with Drew Gordon out there on the floor, they have given up north of 71 points in 4 out of these 5 games. They have only broken 70 points against Cornell, so it's a spot where I do think that they get flattened once again. I said Niagara's an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. So my total 137.5. I flat out don't think Siena does their part with the total, so also looking at the under. This will be the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 885, 886. Fairfield, it's the road face-off against Canisius. Canisius, a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Totals between 146.5 and 147. And I did set Canisius as a favorite of 6 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It is a Canisius squad that has been able to do a really good job with their 3-point shooting as well. I was talking about in my last breakdown the way that this Niagara team has really been able to bomb it from 3-point range. How about this Canisius team absolutely bombing it from 3-point range at 37.7% from distance? Not quite the same as Niagara, but that said, these guys are really able to shoot it well from 3, and for Canisius, it is something that has been able to travel for them. They shoot about 37.8% from 3 at home, 36.2% in a road/neutral court environment, with Trey Dinkins coupled with Simon Ojentontal being able to combine for in that neighborhood about 31 points per contest. They both shoot above 30.5% from 3-point range. And then on top of that, Canisius is going to be able to win that battle down low because their top 6 scorers, 5 of them give you north of 4.3 rebounds per game. Actually, 6 out of your top 7 have, so they've been able to do a better job there. Frank Mitchell has been able to give you about 10 rebounds per contest, and I do think that the rebounding for Canisius is going to be very big against a Fairfield team that they don't necessarily have ideal size. They've been without Alexis Yedna for the entirety of the season. As a result, this Fairfield team right around 295th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Canisius more around 189th. Now, this Fairfield team is a top 150 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis and has really cranked up their tempo. Last season, Fairfield was in the bottom 50 in terms of total possessions per game. They're now a mid to an upper tempo team that has been still doing a solid job on defense. Fairfield's about 186th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, with Bryson Gudine leading the way on offense, shooting 48% from 3-point range. Caleb Fields gives you about 2.5 assists, 14 points per game, and it is a bunch in Fairfield that they've done a good job of being able to generate some steals. Jasper Floyd is able to give you about 5 assists, 2.5 steals per contest. Overall, this is a team just in terms of steals per game. They are getting about 8 per contest. If you look at raw turnovers on a per possession basis, they're clocking in 54th in all of college basketball. It is a Canisius team that they're not really prioritizing that. They're about 200th in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I do think that Canisius going to find some holes in a Fairfield team that is about 211th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It is a Canisius team that's really blocked you down from 3. Opponents are shooting 15.7% from 3-point range at home. Certainly, I think there's going to be a bit of regression there, but I do think that Canisius controls this game from the outside. They get enough rebounding to be able to get this one in. So I did set Canisius as a 6-point favorite, one to lay the number, and we've got a Fairfield team playing much more up-tempo, so I did set my total 150. Looking at the over, and I'm going to be looking at Canisius. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-627, 306-628. Stonehill is going to be on the road facing off against Wagner. Wagner finds themselves as a favorite of 8 points. Total on this game, you're going to be getting in anywhere between 130.5 and 131. And here at the 131, I am going to be taking a look at this total under, and we've been seeing a little bit of movement on this game as well. Right now we're seeing 8 across the board. I know that I was seeing a book or two a bit earlier that was posting up more like a 7.5, and if we can get back to the 7.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Wagner. Here at an 8, it is sort of a wait and see mode, so if we can get north of 8, it is going to be a take for me on Stonehill, catching 8.5 or more, 7.5 or less. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Wagner, so as of right now, trying to see which way this number is going to be moving, but that said, this is a Wagner team that they always play their super slow, super grimy style. They're outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Wagner, of your 362 Division I teams, 351st in terms of total possessions per game. And this is a Stonehill team that was playing quite a bit more up-tempo when they were outside the conference. Stonehill overall for the season in terms of total possessions per game, right around 73rd in all of college basketball. But we saw them get slowed down in conference play last season. I fully expect the same this season. I will say, for Stonehill, the defensive efficiency not really there, 336th in the country. in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Melvin Council is a leader for this Wagner team. He's been able to throw in there 14 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists. He doesn't shoot it well from 3, but overall, Wagner is up to about 33% 3-point shooting. They have been, though, dealing with an injury to Zaire Williams. He's really been the main number 2 scorer for the team. Nobody else outside of him really gives you north of 8.5 points per contest. So Teron Allen has been able to elevate quite a bit more double figures in 4 of the team's last 5 games. He's currently shooting 61% from 3-point range. I wholeheartedly think that we're going to be seeing quite a bit of regression there. And the one thing that Wagner does do on offense, they're only turning the ball over 9.5 times per contest. A little bit of a byproduct of them playing so slowly, but in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, a top 50 team in all of college basketball, and a Wagner team that really locks you down from 3-point range. They're a top 35 team in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It is a Stonehill team that they themselves have been allowing opponents to shoot 38.2% from 3-point range in a road/neutral court environment, but this is a Wagner team that they have a tough time really being able to knife inside, and this is a Wagner team that they just really don't have a lot of size. As a result, Wagner, in terms of their rebound rate, has been one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball, clocking in 315th, and that's a place where Stonehill is able to execute. Now, Stonehill, they themselves really don't have anyone on the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Pano Paladivis, who comes over from Hartford, he is in that fold, but Tony Felder, I like the way that he's been able to run this offense. About 3 assists to about 1.9 turnovers per game. It is a Stonehill team that they do turn the ball over about 14 times per contest, but they really don't rely too much on the 3 ball because they only shoot about 30.5% from 3. Jackson Benigini has been able to give you about 13 points per contest when he's been out there, as he's been a little bit in and out of the fold, but just returned in that game against Fairleigh Dickinson, and that should be able to elevate a Stonehill team that they certainly have been falling on their tough times, both on offense and on defense. It is a Stonehill team that they have been held to fewer than 60 points in 3 of their last 4 games, and if you look at regulation only, because they played against Fairleigh Dickinson in overtime, they have scored 68 points or fewer in all of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it is a Wagner team that they've really been able to find their defense recently as well. The last time they gave up north of 70 points in an affair, you have to go all the way back to their loss against Boston U in December, and they've given up fewer than 70 points in now 8 out of their last 9 games. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slowed down slog, but because Wagner doesn't really do a lot down low, because you really don't have anyone outside of Melvin Council, I do think that Stonehill going to hold in there 7.5 or less, willing to lay it with Wagner, 8.5 or more, taking the points with Stonehill, and going to be diving in on this total under 306-629, 306-630 was supposed to be Texas A&M Commerce playing against Incarnate Word. This game has been postponed, so we move on. 306-631, 306-632. Central Connecticut is going to be playing against Merrimack. The old Merry Men of Merrimack find themselves as underdogs of 2 points. Your total on this game is 132, and for Merrimack, I set them as a 3-point road favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line. I really don't see why Central Connecticut is a favorite in this spot. This is a Merrimack team that, once again, is a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Central Connecticut cannot guard their own shadow right now, as right now this team has been really at home a bottom 75 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. If you look at them overall, they're 161st in the country. It's very interesting because they're giving up right around 4.9 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. This team has been ghastly with their defense at home. On the road, they've actually been halfway decent, so there's that. But you've got a Merrimack team that they do it at home, they do it on the road. It's a team that's 69th, very nice in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, you know that Merrimack is not going to shoot it from 3-point range. This team as a collective, they're shooting 30% from distance, 14 turnovers per game, but Jordan Deckhock should be able to control things down low. 6 boards, right around 18 points per game, going up against a Central Connecticut team that doesn't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Like Merrimack typically just gets destroyed on the boards, and once again, this is a team as well outside the top 275 in terms of rebound rate, but it's a Central Connecticut team as 254th in the country with regards to rebound rate. If you look at their rebound rate at home, this team is in the bottom 40 in all of college basketball as well, so that's going to help out this Merrimack team. You've also got a Merrimack bunch that has Adam Clark, who's been able to give you about 2.5 steals, 10.5 points per game, and then Devin Savage has been able to shoot about 35.5% from 3, 11.5 points per contest. It's a Central Connecticut team that is really relying upon their backcourt duo of Allen Jean Rose along with Jordan Jones. They've been able to combine for 20 points per contest between the two of them. They're shooting about 38.5% from 3-point range, but this is a Central Connecticut team that I think is going to have a tough time being able to sink some threes against a Merrimack team that they just come at you with that very strange zone, and even when they don't generate a turnover, this has still been a team that's been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the arc. 175th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Central Connecticut team that's 260th with this regard as well. I think the Merrimack is able to crank it up. I think that this is going to become a slow grinder of a game in which it's going to be all sorts of sloppy. Set my total 129. Looking at the under, and I trust in the Merrimack style. I'm taking Merrimack outright on the money line. 306-633, 306-634. Prairie View is going to be playing against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff is an underdog of 5 points with your total 157.5. Set by total 165. Looking at the over, Pine Bluff has been the best over team in all of college basketball. All but 2 of their games have gone over the total, and this is a Pine Bluff team that is going to give you a whole bunch of opportunities to be able to bomb it from three-point range. As for Arkansas Pine Bluff, they're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage at 315th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball. And it's not like this Prairie View team is necessarily batting down the hatches with regards to their perimeter defense. They're well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Prairie View, they're not allowing opponents at home to shoot 36.4% from three-point range. So I am all aboard the over in this spot, as you've got a pair of teams that rank in the top 40 nationally in terms of total possessions per game, and the one forte of this Arkansas Pine Bluff team is being able to shoot it from three-point range. You've got Rashad Johnson, who I remember during the 2018-20 season over at Oakland, he set a record for this millennium in terms of most three-point attempts per game of any individual player while he was over at Oakland. So, I mean, his song is John Legend's Green Light, because he's always got it, and he pairs up very well with Kylan Milton. Both of these guys have been able to combine to be able to give you about 36.5 points per contest. They're combining to shoot about 38.5% from three-point range, and then you got Joe French giving you 16 points, shooting 40% from the outside. As a matter of fact, each of your top 4 scorers for this Pine Bluff team do shoot 35% from 3, and then you got Ismael Pletch, who's able to give you 6.5 points, 6.5 boards, going up with Prairie View team that has had a really tough time down low. Brandon Miles has been able to give you about 8.5 points, 7 boards per contest, but this is a Prairie View team that year in and year out, you know that they're going to struggle on the glass. Not like this Pine Bluff team is necessarily too amazing themselves. Arkansas Pine Bluff 362nd out of 362 teams with regards to rebound rate. Prairie View not too far off themselves, 359. So there's going to be all sorts of second chances. Prairie View is able to shoot about 31.5% from three-point range, and this is a Prairie View team that their lifeblood is being able to generate turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, Prairie View is currently 9th in all of college basketball, so I do think that this is going to be a game in which you're going to see a lot of defense turn to offense, and when Prairie View doesn't generate one of those turnovers, it leads to a wide open look. I do think that it's going to throw this Arkansas Pine Bluff team for a loop. This Pine Bluff team just cannot guard to save their lives. I think that you get very much an up and down game, so set my total at 165. Looking at the over, I think that Prairie View is going to be able to generate enough turnovers to be able to take control of this game. Set my line at 7 with Prairie View laying it, so looking at Prairie View laying the number and going to be taking a look at the over. 306-635, 306-636. It is St. Francis of Pennsylvania playing against Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson hopes to be fairly priced as a 1-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 149, and I do think that they're fairly priced. I set Fairleigh Dickinson as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1. Not really willing to lay more than 1, but going to be willing to lay 1, as Fairleigh Dickinson has actually been much better on the road with their three-point shooting defense than at home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 39% from three-point range at home compared to 33.5% in a roadside shoot-your court environment, and you go up against the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that, outside of Cameron Gregory, they just don't have a lot of options. And for St. Francis of Pennsylvania, overall, the team ranks about 286th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But look at what they're doing at home. They're a bottom 75 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis when they're in their friendly confines. That is not necessarily what you want to see. And when it comes to the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team, you just don't necessarily have a ton down low going up against a Fairleigh Dickinson team that, even though they've got such a lack of size, that was very much noted when they were in the NCAA tournament, they do have their top 3 scores, all giving you at least 5 rebounds per game, headlined by Sean Moore, who's been able to give you about 7.5 boards per contest, shipping in their 11.5 points. Ainsley Almoner has been able to give you 16 points on 37.5% three-point shooting. And then you've got Mr. Emmanuel, Joel Emmanuel, has been able to give you about 11.5 points, doesn't shoot it well from 3, and it is a Fairleigh Dickinson team that turns the ball for 13.5 times per contest, but St. Francis doesn't do a great job being able to generate those turnovers, other than Eli Wilborn, who's able to give you about 7 boards, 8.5 points per game. Nobody else on the roster roster really gives you north of 4.1 rebounds per game, and it's a St. Francis team that they just can't get stuck out of neutral with regards to their overall offense, shooting 31.5% for three, 65% of the free throw line. As a low-tempo team, they turn the ball over 14 times per game. They're 261st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. It's a fairly Dickinson team that certainly has their issues down low as well, but with St. Francis just not really finding options to take the load off of Cameron Gregory. I guess the 9.4 points per contest out of Aaron Talbot has been able to do so a little bit, shooting 44% from three-point range, but he's been incredibly inconsistent. That's just not enough in my opinion. I do think that this is going to be an up-and-down, high-scoring affair against a fairly Dickinson team that's one of the quickest teams in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, and it is a fairly Dickinson team that they have just been leading points upon points. They have allowed all but two of their opponents overall this season to be able to get past the 70-point plateau among the Division I opponents that they have played. Meanwhile, for St. Francis of Pennsylvania, they have allowed at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games, so I do think that you get an up and down battle. Set Fairleigh Dickinson as a 1.5 favorite, going to be one to lay the one, set my total 151.5, so also looking over 306-637, 306-638. Texas A&M Corpus Christi is going to be on the road facing off against Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is a 1.5 point favorite, totals between 134.5 and 135. I am going to be taking a look at Corpus Christi outright on the money line. I did set them as a 2-point favorite. Now you've got a Southeast Louisiana team that's playing at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball, 329th in all of college basketball. It's the Corpus Christi team that's looking to bump up the tempo. They're a top 90 team in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think the Corpus Christi is going to do a nice job turning defense into offense. Corpus Christi has actually been one of your best under teams in all of college basketball. Much of this has been because of the fact that they just generate so many turnovers. They're a team that ranks in the top 75 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, all while not shooting it too great from three-point range. Corpus Christi shoots about 28% from three-point range, but they've been able to find someone in Jordan Roberts who's been able to shoot a little bit north of 40% from distance. He's been able to give the team a lot more on offense recently. He's been able to log at least 9 points in each of the last 4 contests for Corpus Christi. I also do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. St. Prim has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and now you've been able to get Gary Clark going for about 11.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and now they're finally starting to find something in the backcourt. Deion Wright Ford, one of the main holdovers, has been able to do a really nice job chipping in there a steal, 11.5 points, and he's really elevated recently. Double figures in each of the last 4 games. It is a Corpus Christi team that's still going to have their issues with regards to the outside shot, but they actually are 61st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, going up against the Southeast Louisiana team that they've got a lot of versatility. You've got someone like Broden Woodbury, who's been able to give you about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game. Nick Caldwell is a do-it-all player at 6'8", 13.5 points, 5 boards, shoots 43% from 3-point range, and then Roger McFarland is a nice Swiss Army knife guy, 13.5 points, 7.5 boards, shoots in the low to mid-30s from 3-point range, but it is a Southeast Louisiana team that they're going to be outgunned down low. They're about 215th in the country with regards to overall rebound rate, and this Corpus Christi team has really done a nice job with their outside defense. They're in the top 125 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and for Southeast Louisiana, they're getting destroyed along the perimeter, 287th with regards to their opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It is a Corpus Christi team that they themselves have been turning the ball over right around about 13 times per contest, but with the way that I think that they're going to be able to generate steals, turn that defense into offense as Southeast Louisiana, bottom 40 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and with them having a few guys like an Alec Woodard who are able to find ways to be able to get the ball in the basket, I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a higher scoring game, especially with Rocco Eastman doing a good job doling out the ball with 5.5 assists per contest. So this is the spot where I did set my total 136, looking at the over with Corpus Christi. I do think that they've got the upper hand here, especially with what they're able to do down low. Set them as a 2-point favorite. So looking at Corpus Christi on the money line and the over, 306-639, 306-640. It is Stetson, and they play us to Chicago State. Chicago State's an underdog of 10 points. Your total on this game, finding it at 138. Did set my total at 142. I'm looking at the over. This Stetson team is in the bottom 50 in terms of total possessions per game, but this Stetson team is just so fascinating because with Stetson in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this team is in the bottom 75 in all of college basketball, yet they shoot as a collective north of 37% from 3-point range. So I do think that we're in for a fun one going up against a Chicago State team that their identity has been their defense. They are now a top 200 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going up against a Stetson team that they do a relatively solid job taking care of the ball. 11 turnovers per game for Stetson. They shoot 82.5% from the free throw line. They shoot 37% from 3-point range. This is not a Chicago State team that goes into inferno mode from 3-point range, but they do a relatively okay job will be able to guard the three-point arc. As for Chicago State, in a roadside-shoot-court environment, they allow opponents to shoot just 32% from three, 88th in the country overall in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, Stetson, while they do such an amazing job being able to hit threes, they don't guard it very well. Opponents at home are shooting 36.1% from three-point range against them. Now, you do have Jalen Blackman, who's going to be the top scorer in this game for Stetson. He's been able to log 22 points on 41% three-point shooting. Alec Oglesby has been able to shoot 42.5% from distance, 11.5 points per contest, and you are going to be able to get about 7 boards, 7.5 points out of Abin Gusterse. That said, I do think that Chicago State going to be able to do a nice job of being able to hold their own down low. I like what Jayshawn Corbett has been able to bring to the table, giving you 7 boards, 13.5 points per game. Not a guy that's going to light it up from three-point range. And Chicago State as a whole, they're only shooting about 30% from three-point range, but I do think that Wesley Carden is going to be able to take advantage of, shall we say, some not-so-great perimeter defense, as he's been able to log 17.5 points, 4.5 boards, shooting 35% from three-point range for Chicago State. They do clock in just 275th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but this Stetson team is 291st themselves, and Chicago State has been able to do a good job being able to generate some steals. Your main two guys, Noble Crawford, Brent Davis, 4.1 steals between the two of them. Crawford is able to shoot 39% from three-point range. It's a Chicago State team that I do think is going to be able to get their offense rolling just a little bit more. It's a Chicago State defense that, they've really been able to hold up at the point of attack. This is a bunch that they've now given up 74 points or fewer in every one of their games, really since the beginning of the month of December, and this is a rematch of a game that we saw earlier in the season where Stetson went to Chicago State, got punked 77-54. Stetson went 3 of 25 from three-point range. Chicago State went 5 of 20 from distance. If you see even halfway decent shooting, this game should go over the total. I do think that both of these teams are going to be quite a bit warmer from three-point range, but I can't see that result and think, Stetson should be a 10-point favorite here as well. I think that there's a little bit of proof in the pudding there, so I did set my total at 142. Here at the 138, I'm going to be taking a look at the over. Way too much of an overcorrection from what we saw the first time around. I do think that Stetson gets revenge, not to the tune of double figures. I've set my line at 6. I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Chicago State. 306, 641, 306, 642. It is American, and they are going to be on the road facing off against Loyola Maryland. Loyola Maryland finds themselves as 3-point underdogs. Your total on this game is 136. I did set my line at 3 as well, so we're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement. I was seeing some 2.5s out there a little bit earlier on American, and if we could get back to that 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it with them. I did set my total at a 135, as this is an American team that is well outside the top 325 with regards to total possessions per game, but they've really been stroking it from three-point range. You've got a guy, Matt Rogers, that is 6'9", right now is logging 14.5 points, 6.5 boards on 37% three-point shooting, and as American as a whole is about 36.4% from three-point range as a collective, so that has been relatively impressive. And for American, last season they were bogged down on offense by the fact that they were turning the ball over about 14.5 times per game. This year that's down to more like 10.5 to 11 times per game, and the question becomes with this total, can Loyola Maryland do their part? Because this is a Loyola Maryland team that has been badly underachieving with regards to offense for Loyola Maryland. They do shoot about 35.5% from three-point range at home, and this is an American team that is allowing opponents to shoot 39.8% from three-point range when they are away from home. That said, this is a Loyola Maryland team that as well has been turning the ball over right around 14 times per contest. As a result, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, Loyola Maryland has been one of the saddest offenses in all of college basketball, clocking in 336th, and at home, they're a bottom 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. When it comes to Loyola Maryland and the way that they're able to guard the three-point arc, 290th in all of college basketball. They have to go up against a American team that does have quite a few guys that they just do a great job of being able to hit their threes. George Bruce along with Lorenzo Dondio have been able to combine for about 19.5 points per contest, both shooting north of 38.5% from three-point range. You've been able to get a little bit more down low as well, with Lincoln Ball being able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, and then Elijah Stevens, 5.5 assists to 2 turnovers per game. Meanwhile, Deion Perry, while he does give this Loyola Maryland team right around 3.2 assists per game, the 3.2 turnovers have been rough for Loyola Maryland as well. They do shoot just 63% at the free throw line against an American team that is going to put you on the free throw line from time to time. Golden DK has been the only guy for this Loyola Maryland team giving north of 5 rebounds per game. He's been able to log about 7 rebounds per game, and this is an American team that they can be had down low, although Rogers does a relatively solid job being able to haul in there some boards. It is an American team that, with regards to their rebound rate, they're about 114th, but there is a negative rebound rate on the road. The problem is, Loyola Maryland, they just don't do a great job on the glass themselves at 222nd, and other than D'Angelo Steins really not having a a lot of outside shooting, I think is going to be the bugaboo for Loyola Maryland in this spot. So I did set my line at 3, willing to lay 2.5 with American, and did set my total at 135. I do think that this is going to be a slow slog, so going to be taking a look at the under on 136, and willing to lay up to 2.5 with American. 306, 673, 306, 674. Moyne is going to be playing against the Sacred Heart, and Sacred Heart does find themselves as 1.5 point road favorites. Total on this game is 144.5. Says Sacred Heart as a 2.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to lay this summer. It is a Sacred Heart team that, even with Tyler Thomas being out of the fold, they've been able to do a really good job of being able to mix and match. As for Thomas, in the first 9 games of the season, he was doing a really nice job, being able to give you about 48.5% 3-point shooting, 5.5 boards. I think I called him Tyler. It's actually Tanner Thomas. But that said, you've got a pair of guys that they still do a nice job of being able to work the glass. Nico Galletti, Alex Sobel have been able to combine for about 13.5 rebounds per game. Galletti at 6'6", good versatility. 2 steals, 14.5 points, shoots only about 30.5% from 3-point range, but does just enough for a Sacred Heart team that I think will be able to overcome the fact that they do give up the 3 ball quite a bit. And this is a Moyne team that they shoot about 34.5% from distance. Sacred Heart outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 39.3% from 3-point range in a road/court environment. Kyon Cleary shoots 44% from the outside, 5.5 boards, 13.5 points per game, but he is the only guy on the roster that really gives you north of 4.6 rebounds per game. In terms of tallest and shortest teams in all of college basketball, this Moyne team is certainly in the bottom 40 with regards to overall size, and that results in them being 348th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, for Sacred Heart, they're more around 323rd. They certainly have had their issues, but should still be able to win that battle down low. Luke Sutherland, someone that just refuses to rebound, despite the fact that he's 6'7", comes in from Siena. Shoots 41% from 3 with 14 points per game. Need more than the 3.5 rebounds per game that he provides his team as well, though. It is a Moyne team that has really been able to heat up with their offense, a relatively mid-tempo team that has found a way to be able to get to at least 70 points in now 3 out of their last 5 games. And if you do want to date it back a little bit further, this Moyne team has now been able to get past 70 points in 4 out of their last 6. Meanwhile, it is a Sacred Heart team that they've certainly been able to find it with their offense. 79 plus points in 3 out of their last 4 games. It's a bunch that has someone in Brandon McGuire who's been able to give you about 3 assists per contest. A pair of guys that come in from the Metro Atlantic in Aiden Carpenter, Raheem Solomon. They've been able to both give you in the neighborhood about 15 points between the two of them. Carpenter shooting 36% from the outside, with Sacred Heart doing a nice job taking care of the ball with about 11.5 turnovers per game and them being able to generate north of 9 steals per game. I do think that Sacred Heart takes control of this game. I do think that they win from within. Did set my line at a 146.5 with regards to this total. I do think that you're going to be seeing quite a few open looks for both of these teams. Looking at the over, I'm a Sacred Heart, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 306, 645, 306, 646. Alabama State plays us at Alabama A&M. A&M is an underdog of 6 points with your total 140, and I did set my total 146. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. Got a pair of teams that rank in the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these teams have really had their defensive woes. Now you're able to take a look at the inverse and say both of these teams have really had their offensive woes as well, but I do think that for Alabama State, they're going to be able to get things heated up, and I did set them as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. For Alabama A&M, they're going to be giving up so many second chances on the glass. Lorenzo Dewani is right now leading the way in terms of total rebounds. He's averaging 3.8 rebounds per game. Now, the good news for Alabama A&M, and part of the reason why I look at the over, their main point guard is back. Cameron Tucker, he was missing for the first 9 games of the season, has come in, giving the team 4.9 assists and 2.8 turnovers per game. Problem is for Alabama A&M, they only shoot about 29.5% from 3-point range. Yeah, they go up against an Alabama State team that's well outside the top 200 in 3-point shooting percentage of their opponents, but Alabama A&M, 341st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and to the credit of Alabama State, more around 176. Not awful, but you're having to rely a little bit too much on Dalen Smith to do a little bit of everything for Alabama A&M. Lone double-figure score with 14.5 points per game. Meanwhile, with Alabama State, there's much more help for this team. TJ Medlock, the son of the coach in Tony Medlock, 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, steal and a half, 2 assists per game. He's a bit of stat sheet sufferer, but then you got CJ Hines giving you 10 points on 37.5% 3-point shooting. You've had Isaiah Range chip in there 11 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. You've got a nice 36% 3-point shooter that's been able to rise up, and just Stephen Walker has been able to see a few more minutes recently as well. So I do like the way that this team is coming together. It is an Alabama State team that they don't shoot it great from the floor, only about 39 or so percent, but that said, they go up against an Alabama A&M team that they are 300 346th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. It is a spot where you've got an Alabama State team that I do think is going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to dominate with regards to their defense. That said, they get to go against an Alabama A&M team that, against Division I competition, they've allowed 70-plus points in all but one of their games thus far this season. So I do think that you're going to have a high-scoring expose. Heck, Mississippi Valley State put up 70 points against them, so did set my total at 146. Going to be taking a look at the over, and with Alabama State willing to lay up to 7.5 with them, set them as an 8-point favorite. 306-647, 306-648. Nichols plays us to New Orleans. New Orleans does find themselves as an underdog of 6 points with a total of 150.5 with New Orleans. Did set them as an underdog of 6 points. I was seeing a 5.5 earlier. If we could get back to Nichols being a 5.5 point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay it with them. With Nichols, you've got two guys with really good versatility that they just do everything for the team. Deontay Smith along Jamal West. These two guys are combining for about 30.7 points, 14.5 boards, 6 assists. Smith shoots 38.5% from three-point range. While this is not the same Nichols team that was creating 100 million steals like they did a season ago, this is still a team that's going to be able to generate a few turnovers going up against a New Orleans team that, to their credit, last year they were turning the ball over north of 16 times per contest. They've gotten that down to more like 12.5, 13 times per game. And for New Orleans, they do a solid job themselves of being able to generate turnovers. Nichols down to 265th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. New Orleans is now the team generating those turnovers, with them being in the top 85 with this regard. But Nichols, I do think, is going to be able to do a solid job taking care of the ball. They turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. They've got pretty much 4 of their top 5 scorers being able to give you double figures. They have a deal with an injury to Byron Ireland, but now he's back at the fold. That helps out this offense just a little bit more, and this is a New Orleans team that I do think is going to get crushed on the glass. You do have, though, the top scorer in this game in Jordan Johnson, who's actually number 3 in the country in terms of overall points per game, 4.2 assists, steal and a half on 23 points per contest at 39% three-point shooting. You betcha he's doing it on volume. This has been incredibly impressive. Now, it is a New Orleans team that's still one of the saddest teams in all of college basketball. In terms of defense, 294th in the country. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, not like the Nichols team is lighting the world on fire at 269th, but they are allowing about 9.1 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a road/record environment. And for New Orleans, right now you've got one guy in Jamon Vincent that's able to give you 5.9 rebounds per game. Nobody else on the roster really gives you north of 4.1 rebounds per game. As a result, New Orleans 331st in all of college basketball with regards to overall rebound rate. Nichols is just 324th, but at home their rebound rate is right around 52.8%, so they should be able to do a solid job in this spot against a New Orleans team that is still turning the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like. It's a New Orleans squad that certainly has been giving up points upon points upon points. The last time they gave up fewer than 73 points in a contest, you have to go back to when they were playing against a non-Division I opponent, and if you're looking at just Division I teams, this team has allowed at least 70 points in every one of their games thus far this season. Meanwhile, you've got a Nichols squad that they're starting to hype up with their offense, 74 plus points in 3 out of their last 4 games. They certainly have been giving it up as well, giving up at least 78 points in their last 2 games in conference play as well. So I do think that you're going to get a little bit of a higher scoring game in this one. Did set my total at a 152. Going to be taking a look at the over out with Nichols at a 5.5 or less because I do think that they control the glass. Going to be willing to lay with them. 306-649, 306-650. Northwestern St plays versus Houston Christian. Houston Christian is an underdog of 4 points with a total of 152.5. Did set my total 151.5. Looking at the under, Houston Christian in the bottom 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and a top 20 team in terms of total possessions per game. That said, I just don't think this Northwestern State team is going to do their part with regards to this total, as Northwestern State, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 326th in all of college basketball. Houston Christian, 360th. The only 2 teams that are scoring fewer points per possession than Houston Christian are Coppin State and Mississippi Valley State, and they're historically bad offenses. And you've got Jay Alvarez for the Houston Christian team giving you 16 points per contest. He's not really shooting it well from 3, but he's able to give you 4.5 boards per contest, and then you've been able to get about 3.5 boards, 14.5 points out of Marcus Green, who shoots 39% from 3, but Green is the only out of their top 5 scorers that is shooting north of 16.7% from three-point range. Houston Christian, 16.7 turnovers per game. Bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Shooting 24.9% from 3, 61.5% the free throw line. Now, you do have a guy down low in Bonke Maring, who's been able to give you about 8 rebounds per game. You also get 8 boards out of Michael Emerbaje. Hopefully I said that correctly, but you've got a Northwestern State team that they are going to lose a battle down low, but at the same time, they've got much more in the backcourt. They do shoot about 30% 31.5% from three-point range, with Cliff Davis being able to fire in there, 43% three-point shooting, 15.5 points per contest. You were able to get right around 6 boards per contest. Jamison Epps has been out of the fold for the last month or so that is going to be hurting them. And for the HOU Christian team, the one thing that they do, I guess, mildly okay is that they don't get completely pummeled on the glass at 304th in the country in terms of overall rebound rate. This is a Northwestern St team that, in terms of their overall rebound rate, it is 341st, but they do a much better job being able to rebound at home rather than away from home. And then you've got the swag transfer, and Dwayne Posey has been able to give you about 6.5 points, chipping in their 4 boards. He's been able to do a solid job with 5+ rebounds in 4 of the last 5 games. I think you get a ton of possessions in this game, but I think that you get a whole bunch of sloppiness. This is a HOU Christian team that has failed to get past 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. For this Northwestern State team, they themselves have scored 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games against Division I competition. So did somebody total 151.5, went at the under, set Northwestern State as a favorite of 3.5 points. So here at the 4, despite how inefficient HOU Christian is, I'm going to be willing to take the points and the under. 306.551, 306.652. It is Bethune-Cookman playing us to Southern. Southern is a road favorite of 5 points. Throughout this game, it's 147.5. Set Southern as a 4-point favorite, so going to be willing to take the 5 here with Bethune-Cookman. The one thing that this Bethune-Cookman is doing a very good job of is being able to generate turnovers, as it is a Bethune-Cookman team that, if you're able to kick the ball to the outside, they're going to allow open threes. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 42.1% from three-point range. Overall, they are 350th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but it is a Bethune-Cookman team that, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, is number 8 in all of college basketball. And this is a Southern team that they do get loose with the ball. They've been turning the ball over right around about 14 times per contest, and when it comes to this Bethune-Cookman team, you've got a lot of high-flying guards on this team. You're not going to be able to get a whole ton down low on the team, but also with this Southern bunch, not like they're doing a great job on the glass. Derek Tizano has been giving you 4.5 rebounds per game. Right now, he leads the way with regards to overall rebounds for this team. It's a Bethune-Cookman team that's 281st in all of college basketball regards to rebound rate, but when it comes to Southern, they are 351st with this regard. Now, Southern, they've got Tayron Joseph, who's been amazing in the backcourt, being able to give you about 20 points per contest. Gives you also about 2 steals per contest. At Southern, they themselves are a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But other than Joseph, you've got one other player that gives you north of 9 points per contest, and Brandon Davis, who's been able to supply about 10.5 points per game. This is a Bethune-Cookman team that you've got a big 3 for this team, as you've got Jacoby Hattie along Zion Harmon, Deshaun Dyson. These 3 guys have been able to combine for 44.5 points per contest. Hattie has been able to give you about 5 boards. They all shoot combined about 30% from 3-point range. It's been a little bit lackluster there in Bethune-Cookman. They themselves do turn the ball over right around 15.5 times per contest, but Derek Carter-Hollinger, the transfer from Montana, he's got a little bit of size at 6'6". Over the last 3 seasons, has shot north of 36% from 3-point range. Has been a little bit off this season, but I do think that he's going to be able to kick it up a little bit. And Damani McIntyre only gives you about 3.3 points per contest, but also generates 3 steals per game. I do think that Bethune-Cookman is going to do a nice job of being able to take the ball away. That is going to be able to keep them lively in this game, and I do think that because both of these teams generate live ball turnovers, and because both of these teams are rather up-tempo, this is a Southern bunch that, in terms of total possessions per game, they are clocking in right around about 66. Bethune-Cookman, in terms of total possessions per game, this is a team that's 49th. They're going to get plenty of scoring. So did somebody total 150, looking at the over, and at anything north of 4, going to be taking the points with Cookman. 306, 653, 306, 654. You've got Florida A&M playing us to Grambling. Grambling is a 1-point favorite with a total of 132. I'm with Grambling. I set them as a 3.5-point underdog. I'm going to be looking at Florida A&M right on the money line for Grambling. Since conference play has began, the defense has looked a lot better. In non-conference play, they're outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's a still Grambling team that is having a very tough time with their defense, 338th in all of college basketball regards points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, got a Florida A&M team that's 357th with this regard, but for Grambling, who's going to throw the ball in the basket? They shoot 28.5% from 3. They have been turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest, and for Grambling, last season, they were a very good team with regards to being able to pound the boards. This year, you've got Jonathan Aku, who's been able to give you about 5.9 rebounds per game, and when Antoine Burnett has been out there, as he's been in and out of the fold, should be good to go for this one. He also gives you about 5 boards per contest, but for a Grambling team that was so good with regards to rebound rate last season, they're now 338th in all of college basketball with this regard. Now, for A&M, 339th. So both of these teams are relative equals with that regard. And for Florida A&M, they have been dealing with the injury to Love Bettis. He came in, he was able to give the team 11.5 points per contest, and then he got injured in mid to late December, but Now they've got a reinforcement in Jalen Spear, who has come back in the fold after he gave the team 10.5 points per game 2 seasons ago, has dealt with injury for quite some time, but in 3 games back, he has been able to supply the team with 56 points, averaging 4.7 assists per contest. He's really elevating the Florida A&M team, and I think that he might be the best player out there on the floor for Florida A&M if you include him out of your top 5 scorers. You've got 4 of them shooting at least 39% from 3-point range that made at least 1 3. So that's actually very good for this Florida A&M team. They're shooting as a collective about 36% from distance, and this is a Grambling team that they are going to allow the 3 ball. Grambling dead last in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 41.8% from 3-point range. I think that this is just a bad stylistic matchup in general for them. It is a Florida A&M team that is going to struggle on the glass, but you have been able to get a little bit of something with about 6 boards, 13.5 points per game out of Cleveland Lamar as well. Should be just enough for Florida A&M to get it done against a Grambling team that they have had their issues all season long with regards to their offense. It is a Florida A&M defense that certainly has been getting gashed, giving up north of 90 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. So very interesting state of affairs here. Did semi-total at a 135.5. Going to be looking at the over and set Florida A&M as a 3.5 point favorite. So taking them out right on the money line. 306.655, 306.656. McNeese is going to be playing against Lamar. Lamar is an underdog of 11.5 points. So on scheme is 148. And did set Lamar as an underdog of 13.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay it. It's a McNeese team that is a top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and a McNeese team that's a top 75 team just in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They do a nice job also of being able to generate turnovers. Shahada Wells, 4 assists, 2.7 steals, shoots 42% from 3, 19.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. If you look at turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this McNeese team is a top 50 team in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, they're going up against a Lamar team that they have been turning the ball over right around about 13 times per contest. It's a Lamar team that in their own right, they're a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But going up against this McNeese team, they cannot allow McNeese to be able to get a lot of open looks from 3-point range, and Lamar, they're allowing opponents to shoot 36.2% from 3-point range in a road/shoot record environment. That is not a good combination. Now for McNeese, they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from 3-point range when they are at home. And this is a Lamar team that, though they have been cooling down just a little bit with their 3-point shooting, this is a squad that is able to go bombs away from 3-point range, shooting about 36.5% from distance. Their top 4 scorers have made at least 1 3 thus far this season. You got 3 of them that shoot at least 38.3% from 3-point range, and a team that does a good job of being able to assist by committee. Chris Pryor has been your main man, being able to give you about 3.5 assists, 10.5 points per contest, but you've also been able to get right around 3 assists out of Jacavion Buckley. Down low, you've been able to have a pair of guys in Adam Hamilton, coupled with Scary Terry Anderson, who have been able to supply the team with about 24 points, 13 rebounds per game. So do like what they've been able to bring to the table, but I do think that McNeese going to be able to do a solid job winning that battle down low with having Christian Schulmate being a double-double machine, 9.5 boards, 11.5 points per game. Now, I do think that for McNeese, a team that shoots 39.4% from 3-point range, we are going to start to see a little bit of regression with this regard. Ontavion Calm, who comes in from Bakersfield, shoots 41.5% from 3, 10.5 points per contest. TJ Richards has shot 46% from 3-point range. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers the way that McNeese has been able to shoot it from 3-point range, shooting 42.1% from 3-point range on the road, 39.2% from 3-point range at home. That said, I do think that McNeese going to be able to do a solid job of being able to get it done here, and I do think that this total is set a little bit too high just because I do think that McNeese is going to do a solid job of slowing this game down. 339th in all of college basketball is McNeese in terms of total possessions per game. This is a Lamar team that they are 26th in the country, but this is a McNeese team that is much better at being able to take care of the ball. So I think that their slower, grimier style wins out. Semi-total 143.5. Looking at the under with McNeese willing to lay up to 13 with them, and wrap things up with 306.657, 306.658. It is Texas Southern. They play us to Mississippi Valley State. Mississippi Valley State is an underdog of 16.5 to 17 points. Total on this game is 127, and made my total 121. We're going to be looking at the under. Talk about a sad game for offense. These two teams are both in the bottom 10 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Mississippi Valley State averages 2.9 points fewer per 100 possessions than any other team in all of college basketball. Dead last, Texas Southern, 359th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're actually averaging fewer points per possession at home than Mississippi Valley State. I mean, you just cannot find anyone that's able to buy a bucket in this game. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under for Mississippi Valley State. The defense has been bad as well. They're in the bottom 20 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, they've been a little bit better in conference play. This is a team that in conference play, they've lost by 11 points or fewer in all three of them. And this is a Texas Southern team that I just can't see them being able to win by this big of a margin. It's a Texas Southern team that against D1 competition, because they played their fair share of games against non-D1 teams, they've been able to bust through and get past the 71-point plateau just twice all season long. For Texas Southern, PJ Henry has been able to give you 12.5 points. He's able to chip in there nearly 2 steals per contest. And then the incarnate word transfer, Jonathan Cisse, he's starting to heat up. He's been able to give the team double figures in 3 of the last 4 games, and he's been able to give a lot more in terms of facilitation as well. A combined 18 assists in the last 4 games, shooting 39% from 3-point range. But Texas Southern, they shoot 28% from 3, 65.5% at the free throw line, and you're really not getting a lot down low as well. Texas Southern is now outside the top 275 with regards to their rebound rate. For Mississippi Valley State, it's been Raekwon Brown having to do a little bit of everything. A steal, 5.5 rebounds, 15 points per game for a team that they shoot 61.7% at the free throw line, 17.5 turnovers per game in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They are the worst team in all of college basketball, and they've got 3 guys that average at least 4 points per game. Areco Gibson has been able to give you 9.5 points, 4.5 boards per contest, and then you've got Donovan Sanders, who's been able to supply about 11 points per game. I think that this is going to be just a really sad display of basketball. This is just rough, to say the least, but I think we've gone a little bit too far. Texas Southern should be able to win this game. Mississippi Valley State is going to deliver another turd on offense, but I think that Texas Southern also delivers a turd on offense, so set my line at 15. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Mississippi Valley State. Made my total 121, so also looking at the under, and that'll wrap things up for this Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. And a big thanks to Tristan Freeman of Boston Brackets for joining me in the last segment, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.